Hey, y'all. I'm Bud Elliott, and this is Cover 3 College Football Summer School. We've done our research on the teams, and now we're bringing on the top team experts from the 24/7 Sports Network to help us fill in the blanks. Please follow us on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. That's Cover 3 Podcast. And leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All right, class is in session. Hey, y'all. Bud Elliott here, and welcome back to the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. This is the Summer School series, and right now, we're going to talk a little University of Miami with David Lake of InsideTheU. David, welcome back to the show, man.
Bud, good to be on with you. Summer school's in session. I can't admit I ever went to summer school, but hopefully I get a passing grade here from you.
I think scholarship-wise, if you got the bright futures, which I'm not trying to flex on that, but like I know everybody got. I think you had to take one semester over the summer or something like that. So I did one semester of summer school. It was cool. Little books, little
Laid back.
slip and slide. Yeah, it was it was pretty fun. So a team hoping to have more fun this year is Miami. They played as a top 35 team according to the Vegas ratings, but schedule was difficult at times, and they had a little bit of close game bad luck finishing with only 7 wins last year. But there's some pretty encouraging things, and one spot I want to start here. Obviously, they hired Mario Cristobal. We've discussed that quite a bit on Cover 3. I think we sampled InsideTheU on that as well. That was like the guy they had zeroed in on. You were absolutely just steadfast in your assertion that was still the top target, and they were still in discussion, and you nailed it, man. So I just want to give you credit for that here.
Thanks. Yeah, it was definitely a strange. I mean, is it even a coaching search? I don't even know what to call that because, look, they definitely left Manny Diaz twisting in the wind. So it was a weird thing to cover, but yeah, they kind of, and really it's because that's the way Mario Cristobal wanted it to be, right? He wanted to finish the job at Oregon, so Miami had to be patient through the Pac-12 championship game, and had to button things up, I guess, that last weekend. But Miami, honestly, Miami felt confident the whole time that they could pull him back home. But it wasn't a done deal. They had to convince him, and they had to make it clear that they were willing to invest the resources necessary to pull him away from a program like Oregon.
Absolutely. So one of the attractive things about taking the Miami job is the offense that Cristobal and new offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis, who comes from Michigan, will be inheriting. And I wanted to open with stylistically, and obviously personnel will dictate this as it must. What do you see being done differently by Gaddis in terms of run pass balance or tempo, personnel usage, et cetera?
I think it's going to be a slower tempo, right? So we can just start there, which should be expected. I mean, I don't know if Rhett Lashley's offense really hit the tempo that they still would have liked, but they intended to play fast, right? His style of offense is very basic, but they look to play fast and hit you with tempo, at least in some spots, right? Gaddis is going to be multiple with his formations. And we saw that in the spring game. Like the spring game was very vanilla in terms of play designs, but pre-snap formations, they kind of threw the book at their upcoming schedule, right? Giving defensive coordinators a lot to study and look at. It's going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets, which Miami fans get excited about, of course. And also just the run game. I mean, it's not sexy to talk about the run game in spring football, but it's definitely a pillar of what Mario Cristobal wants to establish at Miami. It's a lot of pin and pull looks in the run game, whereas the Rhett Lashley offense. And I'm not criticizing by saying this, but it was very basic, right? It's kind of just zone read out of shotgun, and you hope your offensive line wins that battle at the line of scrimmage. I think this style of run game is more searching for angles and leverage and helping the running backs in that way. So I do think the run game's going to be improved. How much, I think, is to be determined. But the run game's going to improve. And then they hope that a receiver emerges as they try to replace Charleston Rambo, who exploded in the second half of the season with his chemistry with Tyler Van Dyke last year. It's still I do think they have talent there, and I do think they'll have guys there that will produce. But if we're talking about, is Miami an 8-win team or a 10-win team, I think that receiver question um, is going to answer that, amongst other things.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my numbers earlier today, and I actually have like tiny percentages on 6-6 all the way up to 11-1.
Sure.
I was almost anything is possible. I do want to ask you about the tight ends there, since you mentioned more multiple tight ends. I saw on Inside the U, which all y'all need to subscribe to if you are a Miami fan for sure, that Mallory missed the spring with the shoulder. I think it was another shoulder injury, right? Is he
Yeah.
expected back? Can they run
Yeah.
multiple tight end sets with the guys they have?
Ideally, they would need Mallory, but they do have I mean, Elijah Arroyo is a guy who's rising sophomore, and he's very talented. He would be a number one tight end at most schools around the country. He stepped up, did a good job in the spring with Will Mallory out, and then you know, is he ready to play 20 to 30 snaps a game? I don't know, but Jaleel Skinner is a very talented freshman that showed out during spring, quite frankly. Still, 230 ish, so still a little skinny, but he can stretch the field vertically, very athletic, freaky wingspan. I think ideally, right, he's that third tight end that they kind of sprinkle in now and then. But yeah, Will Mallory, who frankly has had an injury prone career at Miami, and he was having a tremendous spring when he did get injured. But he is expected to be back for the start of the season. And so I think it'll mainly be those two guys, Will Mallory and Elijah Arroyo. Will Mallory is kind of more like your pass catcher, not much of a blocker, whereas Elijah Arroyo is a good blocker, not quite as athletic as Will Mallory, but he is an athletic tight end in his own right.
No doubt about it. If they get him back, I'm really excited to see a Mallory Arroyo combo
Yeah.
there on offense. Staying on the opposite side of the ball with Rambo, I had a chance to see some of the charting that was done by StatsBomb last year, and the separation that Rambo got on routes compared to the other receivers it was visible,
Yeah, sure.
especially on those scatter plots. But with him and Mike Harley gone, it looks like those two had double the targets of all the other receivers combined. So,
No doubt.
to me, that's like a question that needs to be answered. I don't know if they
Exactly.
fully answered it in spring, but I always liked Restrepo as a slot
Yeah.
in the 7-on scene and in high school. Can he take the slot and just be that guy? And if not, who? And then also certainly on the outside, who do you see on the outside?
I feel good about the slot. Like you said,
Okay,
Xavier Restrepo, I think he can do the job. I think, like, if you're going to bet who's going to lead the team in receptions, it'll be Xavier Restrepo. He's roommates with Tyler Van Dyke. They have a very good chemistry. Is he an NFL level athlete? I would probably say no, but he can be a good, dependable slot receiver at the college level. The outside receiver is where the question mark is. They brought in Frank Ladson from Clemson, who picked it up second half of the month of spring football. But, I think he's a little, and there's nothing wrong with this, but he's kind of a go route guy, right? So he's a
sure.
6'4" receiver that has very good speed, and he's 205 pounds. Miami doesn't have receivers that look like him physically, and he can go vertical on you. In terms of a guy that, like you said, can create separation, that's a question mark. I think the guy that people inside the program are very excited about is Jacoby George.
Okay.
Um, but in the spring game, which is what the fans get to watch, he did have, I believe, two drops. One was, so Jacoby has freakishly large hands. He wears like 3X, 4X gloves for a guy that's 5'11", 6 foot. And there was one throw where he tried to just one hand catch it, whereas if he just went with two hands, it's an easy big gain, maybe even a touchdown. But he had some drops. Keyshawn Smith, who's a returner from last year, he played 700 snaps or so last year and produced maybe 400 receiving yards. I think that's probably what he is. So I don't know if it's fair to expect a jump from him. I think ideally, Jacoby George raises his consistency level because he does have star potential with his ability to make spectacular catches. And I think ideally Frank Ladson is a threat on the outside as a go route guy. They also have Romello Brinson, who was out this spring, that people are excited about. But following the spring too, Mario Cristobal was pretty frank, as he always is. He was, he kind of hinted like if there is a receiver that enters the portal, we would probably explore that option too. So um, it is a question mark. I don't know if it's like 2 years ago, but I don't know if you remember. So it was De'Aaron King's first season.
Right.
Outside receiver was an issue. So Mark Pope, D. Wiggins, I'm probably forgetting one other guy, but they had trouble separating. They had trouble catching the ball. It was an issue. I don't know if these guys have trouble separating. I'm not sure catching really is an issue, although it was in the spring game. I feel better about this group than I did 2 years ago, but that's a low bar.
For sure. So run game wise, last year, looking it up, they were 90th in rushing efficiency.
Yeah.
And that's sacks removed. Just knowing Cristobal's history, and obviously, going from Lashley to Gaddis, they're going to run the ball more this year. I think there's no doubt. Is there a reason to think that they will be running it better?
I think so. I think maybe in the 50s, right? If you look at those,
that's a huge jump, though. I mean,
Correct.
90th to 50th.
Correct. And it really, again, it's because of the angles they're going to be able to get. Like Miami's running backs, they do have speed, right? Like they're not bad players. I think the issue in the run game was the offensive line. They're just not physically dominant players. But if they have the ability to create some angles, with pin and pull schemes, I think they will be more successful running the ball. Again, it's not going to be like we're going to mash you up like Mario Cristobal wants it to be. But I do think in year one, there's going to be a jump.
Awesome. Last question here. I think I'm a believer in Van Dyke. I obviously listen to Inside the U and Through the Smoke podcast. You are as well. Is there anything kind of just at the back of your craw just saying, wait a second, like UVA, UNC, NC State with both backers out, Pitt,
Sure.
Georgia Tech, Florida State, Vatek with the fired coach, and Duke with the, lane, like, is there anything that says he crushed this schedule? I think he's really good. Are we sure he's great? Because I look at those and obviously I see Florida State every week. Florida State was like the second best defense you faced there in that schedule.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think that is fair.
But he makes all these throws.
Right. He does have NFL talent, right? And he did produce at the end of the season, right? Like the production was absolutely there. I think it's fair though to wonder. I mean, the Virginia game, he got off to a very slow start, was bad, quite frankly. You could explain that by saying it was his first real start against a Power 5 team. The next week, same thing kind of happened against North Carolina, right? NC State, I think it's fair to point out they were missing some key players, but he played well, won a tough game. And from there, it looked like he was kind of taken off. And then the Florida State game happened where, again, he started very slow. Now he ends all these games with big time numbers because kind of like in the NFL, right? Most of those guys eventually find their rhythm, and so he is that guy. But I do think it's fair to say, okay, year two now, you got to be consistent, start to finish it in these games. You can't have these ups and downs. But I do think he's a big time player. I don't know. I mean, he has first round tools. He's got to go out and produce this year to really validate that, of course. But he's a big time player, I think.
Let's go ahead and switch over to the defensive side of the ball here, which was Manny Diaz's specialty, but certainly was far from special last year. 51st in overall efficiency. Really good pass defense numbers. On a down-to-down basis, run defense was okay as far as like success rate. And then just 70 and 80 and 60-yard runs just all over the place. It was like they just didn't tackle anybody. Kevin Steele comes in as the DC. I know Kevin loves to use like 6 and 7 defensive back looks. If you look what he did at especially at Auburn, somewhat at Clemson, kind of a complex scheme. I mean, like it can just from looking at all the different kind of things he ran. Starting in the back end, I'm interested to see how they sort this stuff out because I feel like you got You got James Williams, Avante Williams. To me, those are wild cards for this team. You may disagree, but like if they play to their talent level, this could really be a different. Like they'll hit that upper tier of the projection. And you got Tyreek at corner, who's good player.
Solid.
Takori's okay, I think. They bring in Daryl Porter in the portal, and then they got Kinchin's Gilbert Frierson, Keontre Smith still.
Yeah, so
who's
Kinchin's
playing where?
Right, and you could say that too. I mean, I still think Tyreek, for what they have, is best as an outside corner. But you could make the argument his best skill set is as like a big nickel or maybe even as a safety, right? And I will say, coming into spring, this staff was concerned about the cornerback position in particular because they were kind of up and down last year. But following the spring, they were very pleased by what they showed. And I take that as these guys were better than we expected. I don't think they're out here saying that it's a lockdown group. But yeah, I mean, look, if you go Cam Kitchens, Avante Williams as your safeties, that gives you James Williams as like a chess piece that can move around in the front a little bit, which Kevin Steele does, right? Like he'll do that with some guys. One guy who emerged, and was a former Florida State guy, Florida State commit, Isaiah Dunson. He was probably the surprise of the spring. Right. So I think they feel good about corner depth. I don't know if they have a total lockdown guy. If it is, it's Tyreek. I think Tyreek's more of like a good, solid corner. But yeah, they do feel good about how they can mix and match there. Linebacker, I think, is a concern. And
I was going to go there because I'm not really sure, who should I be believing anybody here? Like, is there a reason to believe in any of these dudes? Like Flag and Steed played a lot of snaps, but not necessarily good snaps.
So Flag is behind Steed now. Together, last year they kind of played together, middle and weak. So now they're both in the middle. Steed, pretty much the whole spring, was first. Flag second. Keontre Smith is weak side. And then after him, it's kind of like a toss-up of guys. But they did add Caleb Johnson in the portal, who comes from UCLA. Solid guy, veteran guy, probably a starter for Miami, raises the floor, but game changer, probably not.
At linebacker though, right? Not D end.
Correct, at linebacker. Okay, cool. So,
right.
I think it's definitely the weakness, and I think people in the program would tell you that. But I think they do hope they can improve the defensive line play, and maybe that helps the linebackers be a little bit more consistent. And let's be real too. I think this staff would take it if the linebackers just improve tackling. And I think that's something they feel like they can control, right? The athleticism, the body types, those kind of are what they are with these guys. But can you just tackle the guy when you get there? If they do that, the defense is going to improve.
Yeah, I mean, like the defense really was not terrible in every category. It's just explosive run rate, 119th in the country allowed.
Yeah.
I feel like for a team with Miami's level of speed, that's just not acceptable. It's not like you're getting beat to the edge due to lack of athleticism for the most part, Yeah. So there's reason to think that could improve, obviously, just from better coaching or more consistent effort.
And who knows, in the spring game, just eye test, it did seem like the tackling was more consistent, right? Again, this is a very low bar.
Right.
We're talking about tackling, which I think we all take advantage, but Miami fans or take for granted. But Miami fans, after last year, they're at Michigan State, right? They forced 30 missed tackles, right? With Kenneth Walker the third at running back. I think he alone broke 20 plus tackles in the game. So little PTSD going on with tackling in Miami fans.
I think it'll be better. I mean, I'm doing Arkansas State next, and Miami is only 2 spots worse than Arkansas State was. I'm not really sure Arkansas State will be better in explosive run rate allowed, but I think Miami should be. Let's finish here on the D line. Again, we're talking to David Lake of InsideTheU, also the Through the Smoke podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe. So Johnson, McLeod, Nesta, and Ford are all gone, and they got a lot of snaps last year. I don't know what that says about the guys behind them who didn't get the snaps. And then they hit the portal really hard. You get a good day from UCLA, Messidor, obviously from West Virginia. They called a press conference to address him leaving. You get the USC kid, is it Liechtenstein, and then there's another dude I forgot here in my notes.
Antonio Moultrie, who's
from UAB.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can count on Leonard Taylor.
I think so. Yeah.
Who else? Like, is this unit the problem, or are we just betting on the numbers to be okay?
So they were hyping up, and we heard this from scrimmages as well, but Jafari Harvey, who's a returning edge guy, he played probably 400 snaps last year, but I think it was only 2.5 sacks was his final output. And he is a guy that's very athletic. He does play with good effort, good motor. But for some reason, he hasn't been able to put it all on the field with production. And I think it's like technique type of issues that he just has to develop. And supposedly, he was doing that in the scrimmages. He was held out of the spring game. So he is a guy they're excited about. They're excited about Leonard Taylor. And then, you mentioned the transfers. I think Akeem Mesidor, he's a guy that, I don't think a lot of college football fans know about, but he's a big-time game wrecker, like a 275-ish defensive tackle that can get after a quarterback. So Miami's very excited about him. Mitchell Agude will provide depth as an edge rusher. And they're still chasing defensive linemen. So, by going after all these guys, the defensive coaching staff is telling us with their actions that they feel like, I think the body types bothers them. Manny Diaz liked a smaller, quicker defensive lineman. That's just not what Mario Cristobal's about. So they're trying to address it in the portal. Do they have game changers? I think Mesidor might be. I think Leonard Taylor might be. But I think they're really trying to improve it via depth.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Well, David, this is it's been extremely informative, man. I'm really glad to have you on. We'll have to have you on again before the season here again on Cover 3. Make sure you guys check out Inside the U and also the Through the Smoke podcast. They do a great job. And we'll be seeing you soon, man.
Thank you, Bud. Anytime.
All right. That's the bell. Cover 3 College Football Summer School is over for today. But don't worry. We'll be back soon with even more episodes filling you in on the top teams in college football. Please give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on YouTube and on Twitter at Cover 3 Podcast. And we'll see you all soon.